Okay, so with your main piece, you've got 2 drill holes. Okay, that's the beginning and the end markers for your jet pocket. The skinny one, remember, is your upper jet. The fatter one is your lower jet. They should be both fused. We are going to place them above and beyond and below those 2 drill holes. Your skinny one is your upper, so we're going to place that to the top. And the fatter one is your lower jet. We're going to place that to the bottom. What we're going to absolutely make sure that between our drill holes and the end of our jets have the same distance. So we're going to make sure they're centered over those drill holes, so we get the same amount of excess coming over either side. Alrighty, once we've done that, we're going to pin him in place just so he stays in place and doesn't move around. These 2 should be meeting but not overlapping. There shouldn't be too much of a gap in between them, and you should just see your drill hole when you look at him. So you should be able to just see your drill hole. These 2 should be meeting, not overlapping. Alrighty, we are going to do 2 parallel stitch lines, a foot's width from that cut edge in the center. We're going to back tack, stitch and back tack at each end, and we are going to overrun that drill hole by 6 millimeters. Okay, now I know that we are machining, so it's not a precise art, but I would say anywhere between 4 millimeters and 1 centimeter is quite okay. You would not want to be overrunning by more than 1 centimeter, otherwise you're not going to have enough seam allowance on the side, and you would not want to be doing anything less than 4 mils over, because that means that your drill hole might become visible, which we don't want. Alrighty, so but we're aiming for 6 mils over, so wherever that drill hole is, we'll start 6 mils over. So you might want to just measure him up. So I put a pin in there so I know that's where I'm going to begin and end. 6 mils over that drill hole. So that's my bent pin, let's not use that one. Okay, so that's going to be my beginning and end point. Okay, so I'm going to go back tack, stitch, back tack, and the same on the other side. Start him off. Foot's width from that cut edge. Oh. Okay.
Sometimes it just back tacks for you.
Yeah. Let's just uncheck that part. Now, if you a little bit like this machine here, it's gone a little bit haywire for me. Unpick what you do. You might find it easier to actually stitch into the corner rather than back tack into the corner, which is what I'm going to do now. It's just a different way of achieving the same outcome. I'm actually going to start with my 1 centimeter back tack, stitch in, and then pivot the whole piece around. So start stitching up to my pin, which is 6 mils over my drill hole. Turn the whole thing around. It's just rather than back tacking into the corner, I've just stitched right into the corner, and off I go. Same deal on this side. Come up, make sure I'm 6 mils over, and now I should be able to back tack. And now I'm going to pivot it around, and I'm going to do the other side. Okay, so same deal. If I'm not too confident back tacking into that corner, I'm going to stitch into that corner one direction, then turn it around the other direction. Make sure it's 6 mils over. Make sure your ends are perfectly, perfectly square and level. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's really important. Keep stitching along. Up to the end. I'm making sure that they're absolutely level with that end. If you're not quite level, make sure you use your back pedal to get it absolutely level. Off your ends, and now let's do a check to see that we're absolutely level and square. If you're not, you can do a couple more stitches to square it up and make sure it's level. Two things that we need to absolutely check once we've checked our work. that those two lines must be parallel, absolutely parallel. They mustn't be going skinnier at one end and wider at the other end, and they mustn't be going, this one can't be going wobble, wobble, wobble. They must be very straight, and they must be absolutely parallel. That's important so that your welt in the end is very square looking. Otherwise your welt will look fatter at one end and skinnier at the other, which is not what we want. The other thing that we need to absolutely check is that our ends are square. Okay, if our ends are not absolutely square, so that rectangle is square at the ends, if it's not, you'll find that your welt will look lopsided or angled, which we don't. This is a true welt, which means we want it to look like a perfectly square-ended rectangle. Okay, so we need to make sure that those lines are parallel and that both of these ends are absolutely square and level with each other. If they're not, you can do another back tack, do an extra stitch or whatever you need to do. If you would like to, you can grab your pencil and draw a nice square end in it so you know where you need to stop and finish and start to make it absolutely perfect. But that's two really important things. Must be parallel, must have beautifully square ends on them. Okay, so that's stage one of your main. Now the next thing we need to do is attach our facing to our lining. So we're going to grab our facing, we're going to stitch it to our lining on one side, 1 centimetre seam allowance, okay, and then when we press that seam, we press that seam down towards the lining. Okay, so press that seam down. When you go to the iron, give it a good old press that seam down towards the lining. So just to recap, when we find our drill holes, we put our shorter upper jet on the top and our wider lower jet on the bottom, right sides together, so right sides on the inside. We stitch 6 mils beyond our drill holes on either side, so stitch 6 mils longer than our drill holes on either end. A foot's width from our cut edge, making sure they're parallel and making sure the ends are perfectly square. Really important to get that correct. This is what you need to spend the time on to get correct. If that's not correct, your whole pocket from now on will be wrong, okay, which will be a resubmit. So make sure parallel, ends square. If you have any queries, come and ask me, because getting this first stage right is absolutely imperative to get the rest of everything else right. Any questions? No? Okay, go for gold.